Module 2 is all about financial statements analysis. And then Module 3 is financial planning and working capital management. All of them, I think, are part of Part 9 of the textbook. So financial statements analysis will be our lesson for the next few sessions before going to financial planning and working capital management. Now, we know that financial managers do not only plan for today or for the next few months, but also for the near future. It's so difficult for companies now to plan for a distant future, like maybe 10 years is quite difficult already. 2 years, 3 years is okay. Even 5 years can be very difficult because of the VUCA environment. Remember the VUCA, guys? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's the kind of environment that companies are exposed to right now. So financial planning is very important. So financial managers would often check about the liquidity of the organization of the firm. Do they have enough cash in order to support their operations for the next few months? Do they have enough cash to pay off an obligation that will fall due, for example, a tax that will be due? Do they have enough cash in order to distribute dividends? Does the company have enough cash to support its long-term investments? So these are very important questions which the finance should be able to answer. Finance also looks at not only short-term, as I mentioned a while ago, but also long-term plans. However, if a company will be able to plan for the short-term and the long-term, it has to know first how it stands right now, where the company stands now. The company should be able to appreciate or understand perhaps what they're lacking now, their weaknesses in the current situation, in order for them to plan for the short term and the long term. Now, in this chapter, we're going to take a look at that. We're going to try to understand the firm's overall performance. And this is done by taking a look at financial ratios. Okay, financial ratios are very important because they send some signals. Okay, let me open the Excel file that we're going to use. So when we do financial statements analysis, it's very important to take a look at some things. Okay, so we said that companies have to do both short-term and long-term plans. Okay, short-term and long-term plans. However, this can be achieved if the company appreciates or understands its current situation. Okay, no short or long-term planning can be made if the company does not understand where they're now. So this can be done, and appreciating the current situation can be done by looking at financial ratios. Okay, financial ratios are metrics that use the financial statements of the company so that the company knows about, let's say, the liquidity. Okay, it's important to know the liquidity of the organization, how they're able to use their assets, so efficiency. Okay, then we can take a look at leverage. Okay, how deep in debt is the company? Are they able to maintain a good capital structure? Okay, efficiency, liquidity. Okay, efficiency, or we can call it asset management. How good is a company in managing its assets? Okay, and we can even take a look at its market ratios. Okay, so these are some of the things that can be determined using financial ratios. Now, when a company looks at these figures, for example, liquidity. So one ratio by which a company can measure its liquidity is current ratio. Okay, that's one example, current ratio. Current ratio is defined by current assets over current liabilities. So let's suppose that the current ratio of the firm is equal to 2.0. So what does this indicate? What's the meaning of 2.0? It means that for every 1 peso of current liability, the company has 2 pesos of current assets to pay its current obligations as they fall due. Now, the question is this a good ratio or bad? Is the company liquid enough in order to pay its current obligations? Now, we can say that the company has, for every 1 peso of current liability, the company has 2 pesos of current assets to pay its current obligations as they fall due. But in answer to the question, good or bad, okay, we might be hard-pressed to address that question, to answer that question. You know why? Because ratios should not be analyzed in isolation. Okay, so just because the current ratio is 2, it doesn't automatically mean that the company is capable of paying its current obligations and then that the company is performing well. Okay, we don't isolate individual ratios. It has to be taken into context. Therefore, the operative word here is that in order to assess whether the company is performing well or performing poorly, the operative word is to benchmark. Benchmarking is very important. Okay, so how will now the company benchmark so that it can come up with a credible analysis or assessment if the company is performing well or not? Okay, there are 2 ways to benchmark. One way to benchmark is benchmark against time. Okay, so that's the first way that the company should benchmark its performance. How is that done? Okay, so in this instance, we know that the current ratio, okay, current ratio for 2020, it's equal to 2. Okay, now to benchmark against time, it means that you compare it with past performance, 2019, say 2018. Let's assume that on 2018, the current ratio was 2.8, and then 2019, it was 2.5. Okay, now we can see now a clearer picture. Okay, we can see now that technically the firm seems to be deteriorating as far as its capability to pay their current obligations. Because in 2018, for every 1 peso of current liability, the company